Hello everybody, welcome to Flight Pass. This must be around about episode 27, I believe now, of the Waterloo campaign. Good to see you, my name is Simon. We are currently in the village of Genappe in Belgium. And we are following doing a brief overview of the Battle of Waterloo, the campaign of Waterloo. So we've got to the 17th of June. We've just flown over the battlefields of Ligny and Quatre Bras. We're now going to head north up this road to this number 3 dot here, which is the battlefield site. We'll then head in this section. We'll head to Brussels, and then from Brussels, when I was going to head out on this road, we'll look at see if we can get to Ghent and then on to Ostend. This is well, I thought what we'd do is we'll do a quick reconnaissance of this area so that you guys get to understand where the distances are, and then we'll go back to the actual beginning of the military action, and we'll go through it in a lot more detail. But I feel if you've got an idea of the distances involved all around, then you can kind of grasp the situation better. So let's jump back into the Huey and we'll continue our flight on. So on the 17th of June, the British army led by Wellington, the Anglo-Dutch army led by Wellington, they are have discovered that their allies, the Prussians, have been knocked back at Ligny. They're not completely routed, but definitely no longer in charge of the battlefield, let's put it that way, of Ligny. They are falling back, and Wellington has to fall back because otherwise his flank is exposed. He's not sure at the moment where they're going. He's worried that the Prussians will fall back on their supply route. And so he needs to get in contact quickly with Blücher concerning where they're likely to try to meet up. Now, Blücher is a prince. He's a sort of a blustery kind of guy. He's kind of like, yes, we'll help you. Nicer was a bit sort of, well, they didn't help us at Ligny. Not that was Wellington's fault. He was trying to get there, but he didn't. But whatever happens, Wellington is now pulling back up this road because he's surveyed this land previously. He came through this area on his way to Paris in 1814, I believe. And Wellington always had an eye for terrain. He always had a sort of looking out for potential battle sites. He'd have his people survey these lands. He'd have them look out for them, survey them, check them out, and he'd know his best position. So I would guess that on every single approach, especially in the south of Brussels, Wellington would have had his favoured battlefield site if he had to use one. He was that kind of guy, and so one of these sites which we know he surveyed and had a look at was the ridge at Mont Saint-Jean, which we are coming up to now. Now this is so we're arriving now at the battlefield. This is We're coming over the Napoleon's headquarters. We've got the Belle Alliance, and this here, believe it or not, is the ridge that Wellington chose. Now, there's two things to mention here. One, because this is the battlefield site. This battlefield has changed because of this mound here, this monstrosity that has ruined his battlefield. Wellington even says, "Oh my God, you've ruined my battlefield," later on after the war. And but this is the site here. Now what we'll do, we'll quickly, briefly jump out and have a look. Because the ground, the topography of this battlefield is so subtle. Let's do an overhead shot first. Okay, so what we are looking at here is we're looking along the ridge, and so you have to imagine that this soil here is put back along the ridge. This is the ridge that we're talking about here. It's quite subtle, but what it provides is this area behind, which is the famous reverse slope that Wellington always liked. And if you can imagine all that soil there on that panorama being put back, you can see that if you're down here now, you are on this reverse slope. And this is the sort of thing that Wellington likes. You've got in the distance Brussels. He actually does have a forest behind him. Most of this isn't here. These buildings and this modern road wasn't there. But this is his first proper battlefield that he could see that was further near enough to Brussels for him to use. And it had some advantages. These are modern buildings here, so ignore this, but this is the main road that goes down towards Quatre Bras. So if you can think, this building here is La Haye-Sainte. Now this, imagine, is basically the center of Wellington's line. This is it's on the road. It's also about 200 meters forward of his line, and on the right hand side you can see the ridge sort of moves around here, and on the right hand side you've got the chateau of Hougoumont. This was his defined his right flank. He did have some troops at Braine-l'Alleud just to cover his extreme right. Now, most of these, the forests, woods are no longer here, but you can, in front of Hougoumont is would have been woods, trees, heading in this direction, this way. On the so La Haye-Sainte is I say in the middle, and then what we have over here is a series of sort of dwellings, farm dwellings, buildings anyway, over this side, and this defined his left flank. So this is the extent of Wellington's lines. And so if we actually come down now, so your troops are predominantly stationed behind this ridge as we come around here, following this road. This road here was known as a sunken road, and we'll see. So you can see this sort of reverse slope, if I can just get the thing right. And that's important because the reverse slope nullifies one of the main components of Napoleon's army, which was the Grand Batterie. And from Napoleon's position, which is this is the Belle Alliance, it's really difficult to see the subtleties of this battlefield. In a certain sense, it's quite a clever move, but if you can imagine that mound is now put down, you can't. It's such a subtle ridge, you wouldn't know about it. But from here, and we know that Napoleon had built a platform, he could see the forest behind, so he knows that there's a guy that his opponent is offering a battle with his army back to a forest. So there's a lot of subtleties about this battlefield, and I think it's only someone like Wellington with his eye for detail, this is Huguemont, would be able to see this ridge and know that that's where he wanted to stop them. If you imagine he was coming down here in 1814, and he comes out of this forest, and he's already probably thinking, okay, this is interesting, this is interesting, this is interesting. We've got a reverse slope coming up here, and then we now drop down on the other side. And I think only someone who's been in the Peninsular War for so long would have noticed this, and linked it into everything else that was going on, and considering the distance to Brussels itself. And whilst we're here, the Prussians, they wouldn't pull back to on their supply route. They actually would come over from Wavre. Now Wavre is over here. So this is where Blücher will bring his troops back to. So again, we'll follow the Prussian route to here, and it's when Wellington sends off dispatches to Blücher, and Blücher says that you have your battle. I'm coming towards you. He actually had a corps that never managed to get to Ligny, so they were semi-fresh. But you can see now the difficulties that the Prussians had in trying to get across this kind of terrain. It's much more valleys and ridge valleys, rivers, all that sort of stuff. And I'm trying to find where it is now. Such a subtle battlefield is brilliant. I think already lost. Anyway, you can see the different nature of the terrain involved as the Prussians come across over this way, and what they will do, even though Wellington wants them to join him on the ridge, his ridge, they will actually pop up on the left-hand side, around about here, and threaten the right flank of Napoleon, which is here. So we will have a look at that journey there, but you can see the nature, the distance and the nature of that track. Now, the Prussians were followed by Grouchy. He was given a force to basically follow the Prussians. And of course, we get that famous line that you should march to the sound of the guns. But Grouchy would have had a pretty difficult time, I would have thought, getting across in between the Prussians without, these roads don't look great and the forest doesn't look great. Trying to get to the sound of the guns coming across here might have been difficult, but we can discuss that later. But like I say, this is a quick look at the battlefield. So what I thought I'd do now, we'll head now towards Brussels to give you an idea of the distances that they had to travel on the day. So remember, back on the 16th of June, Wellington had to ride from Brussels to Quatre Bras, and so it gives you an idea of the distances involved. So we'll now head north to Brussels. Now, I hope you enjoy this. If you are watching on YouTube, it's good to see you. I see I've been picking up the odd follower every now and then. If you enjoy this sort of stuff, then give us a like and a subscribe. You can find me streaming live every other day, probably, doing these sort of things. We've done stuff on D-Day. We've now done Waterloo, but there's other bits and bobs. It's anything basically that is historical base. We'll be able to use the Huey to have a look at the topography and the lay of the land. So we're heading now into Brussels, so you can see the distances involved. And this was a major forest area just to the north of the Battle of Waterloo. This was something that Napoleon thought was an error for Wellington to do. To have your back as an army to a forest meant that it was very difficult to retire or organized. But because Blücher in Ligny, he had retired to Wavre, and had said to Wellington that he will come to his aid. Wellington decides to make his stand. Otherwise, it would probably have meant retiring back onto Brussels. But we are flying now north. And what I thought we would do, we will finish this section. We'll fly along the road from Brussels to Ostend, so that you get an understanding of Wellington's supply lines. So we have just looked at some of the area of the battlefield. We will be going back over this area. Don't worry, we're doing in detail. But I thought we'd just have a quick reconnaissance flight around, so that you can see the distances involved, so you can imagine doing all this on horseback. And then once we've had a look at Brussels, we will then fly along this road here to Ghent. Now remember, Ghent is where the Bourbon monarchy has retired to. And so it makes it difficult for Wellington to give up Brussels. He has to defend in front of Brussels, and so I'm sure he had ideas of where he would form a line of defense on each of these roads coming out. But the ridge at Mont Saint Jean was the one he chose for this southerly route. But I'm sure that if Napoleon had come through Mont, which is down to the south here, then I'm sure he would also have a similar battlefield probably in mind along this road near Braine-le-Comte. Right, we are into Brussels. Now remember, Brussels had become almost like a party town beforehand. The air, the spirit of the occasion, it felt like a ball season. It felt like a hunt season. They were comparing going for Napoleon as like hunting a fox. And it was almost like a sort of a spectator sport, really. And there was many occasions of reports of these people in Brussels going down to the battlefield to watch, to have a look at it. So we're coming up to the old centre of Brussels here. And of course, so Wellington had the ball. He had the Duke of Richmond's ball on the night of the night of the 15th of June, and it kind of made sense for him to do that. There was rumours going around that Napoleon had crossed the border. But being at a ball meant that most of the people in the ball were his officers. He could give off an air of calm. It meant that all the messengers and dispatch riders knew where he was, could get to him. It also meant that he could easily dispatch his officers off as and when he needed to. He couldn't react immediately to the first message. As you see, that distance we just flown there in a helicopter. These messengers were doing probably on horseback, maybe several horses, but they would normally say if you had a messenger, say the Napoleon crosses the bridge at Charleroi, the message has to go to Blucher. Blucher then sends it off to Wellington. And some of these messages could take hours. I mean, 8 hours. You can sort of try to track them when they were sent and when they were arrived. But of course, Wellington couldn't just even just saying, "Oh, this is a message saying Napoleon has crossed the border here." He's getting reports all along his frontier of different things, and he needed more than one. You watch what he does. He doesn't seem to react to the first message, but the second one, then he starts doing things, and he starts sending the troops down the road to Quatre Bras when he realizes that the main thrust is coming from the Charleroi area. So we're heading now out to towards the North Sea. And we're following basically the main road from Brussels to Ostend via the Bourbon monarchy's temporary palace at Ghent. And the other area of his main supply routes was Antwerp. So you've got to bear in mind when we do all this that these are the things that basically are of concern to Wellington. His first reaction is is to pin Wellington, hopefully slow him down, get the troops organised, bring them together, hopefully get the Prussians and the British together, though that is what Napoleon's trying to prevent, and also protect his supply lines, because if he breaks this supply line to Ostend or even to Antwerp, then his army is in serious trouble. At the same time, he's under political pressure to save Brussels. If Brussels falls, we've got issues, because the Belgian elements of his army have recently been fighting for Napoleon in the wars up to 1814. The whole Belgium area here has just come under the King of the Netherlands, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So there's a lot of unrest in that sort of sense. So losing a capital would be disastrous in terms of, possibly a lot of the troops that Wellington have commanded under the Belgian side of things would possibly go across to Napoleon. That seems like a good place to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll fly off to Ostend, and we'll start talking about Captain Mercer. He's an artillery guy. He wrote his diary of these events, and we can follow him, get an idea of the place that he visited prior to the campaign. If that sounds good, I'll see you in the next bit.